Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the live stream that I do a couple of times a week, where we talk about careers and job search and hiring and resumes and interviews and networking and all that kind of stuff. So this is a live Q&A. So if you are seeing my face and you are a subscriber to my channel and have been for any amount of time, you should be able to see a chat box. Get in the chat box, get into the chat box and ask me your questions. If you're wondering about something or struggling with something, that's what we're here to talk about. The title of this stream is called Job Search Hacks, Insider Secrets Every Job Seeker Needs to Know. So we're going to be covering that. This is episode number 132. And I'm going to kick things off by going over, I made a short list of 7 things that I'd like to run over with you guys for job search hacks. We're going to start with that. But first, as always, a shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. My Patreons, you're awesome too. My super thanks donors, those are always nice to get. You're awesome too. And my viewers and participants, that means you. And I'm talking to you. Thank you for being here. Okay, let's get the show on the road. So, job search hacks, insider secrets every job seeker needs to know. Why can't I talk today? I think that was caused by just being flustered, having to get back to my office to do this in time. So number one, okay, here's kind of just some notes I wrote down. Stop asking what jobs are posted. Instead, ask who is growing, struggling, and understaffed right now. That's kind of, more of a better way to think about it. Most jobs are filled before they're posted. That is a thing. There's a lot of stuff going on in the back end. You don't really know what the motivation is behind them posting jobs. So part of a job search campaign is not just doing one thing. You should do more than one thing. So if you're applying to posted jobs, that's great. There's no reason to stop, but you should also do other things in addition to that, because that's where it's really going to make a difference. As we've covered many, many times on this channel, approximately 80%, even more than 80% of jobs are not posted. So, that's good that you're looking at the posted jobs. That'll give you access to those 15% of jobs that are posted. But for the others, the way hiring is usually done, it always has been, and it probably will for the foreseeable future, is the hidden job market, is where people don't post jobs but rely on referrals and things like that. Okay, now you can access that by doing things like direct outreach, okay? And there are more advanced methods too. Something that I have mentioned on this channel a couple of times over the years is something that I've talked about, where I'm not sure what the official term is. I used to call it a term, but I don't think anybody else really uses that term. So basically what you're doing is you're looking for demand. You're looking for which employer is expanding, which employers are hiring, which ones have the most need, the ones that are prospering, and then you apply there, you target there. So if you're doing a direct outreach campaign, that would obviously be the target to look at, right? Okay, so instead of wondering about what's posted, because what jobs are posted are not necessarily indicative of where the jobs actually are, since most of them are not posted, instead look at who's around you, who's growing, and who needs your help. Now, this might sound very hokey, very pie in the sky kind of stuff, but it's true. And I highly encourage you to do your own research along these lines, learn all you can, and adapt your job search campaign to that. That's what's going to get you hired, okay? Number 2, hiring managers don't want the best candidate, okay? They want the least risky candidate. That's another open secret. One would assume that hiring managers are looking for the best candidate, the most qualified candidate, the one that stands out from a crowd, that kind of stuff. Those assumptions don't really bear out in reality. You know what I mean? That's usually certainly when there's a recruiter involved, they're not looking for the best candidate. They're looking for the least risky candidate. That's why they have a problem with job gaps. That's why they ask you why you left your last job. That's why they want to talk to you in person and ask you questions about how you resolve conflict and this kind of stuff. It's because they're looking at all the potential downsides. That's why they ask you, what are your salary expectations, or what your previous salary was. It's because those questions have nothing to do with your qualifications. They're looking for possible risk factors, right? Like if you've been paid an astronomical amount of money for the last few years, you may not be enthusiastic about this job once you realize that it pays a certain amount. Like that has nothing to do with your qualifications. That's to do with a risk factor of you rejecting the job or taking it, but on the down low, you're kind of thinking like, I don't really care too much about this job. I'm only here temporarily until I find something better, right? Those are all to do with risk factors. And that's the primary thing that recruiters are looking at when they examine you. So that's the thing. It's a fallacy to kind of always assume that they're looking for the best candidate, because they're not. They're looking for the least risky, at least for worker level jobs. That's how it goes. Okay? I'll throw that out there. Remember, get in the chat. This is a interactive live stream. I know it's Friday, TGIF, but this is the rare exception when I decided to elaborate on the title a little bit. I generally have nothing prepared to say, so I'm just here to answer your questions. So get in the chat. While we're waiting, I'll just continue this. Number 3 that I wrote down earlier was resumes answer one question only, and that is, should I reject this person? Okay, your story is what gets you hired, and that story is told usually in conversations. So even with traditional job interviews, that's how it works. The reason why people want to pick you is not because of your resume. It's because of, now that they've met you and they've heard about your experiences, they see what type of person you are. They get an idea of what you will probably be like on the job because they've spoken to you. They've heard some of your opinions, some of your approaches to doing things. That's what gets you hired, not your resume. The resume answers the question, should they reject this person, right? That's what it's for. Okay, really, and the way they use it. Okay, number 4, timing matters more than talent. That's the nature of job search. It's more based on, you coming along at the right time where this employer just happened to be looking for someone like you now, right? That's what it's based on. If an employer is not hiring right now because they don't have a vacancy, it doesn't matter how talented you are. It's just that they're not looking right now, and they're not looking for your exact thing right now, right? So do you know what's going on with the employer when you approach them from outside? No, you don't. You have no idea. You know that they're an employer, but whether they're looking for someone like you at this moment, there's no way to detect that. So you apply. You either apply for a posted job or you reach out to them directly, right? In multiple ways. And, what matters most is not who you are in an absolute sense and what qualifications you have. What matters most is, are they looking for someone like you right now? That's really what it's about. So it's a numbers game, that's the name of this game. So if you're relatively new to job search, that's kind of what the problem is, when you do get hired, you get hired usually because this employer just so happened to need someone very similar to you right at this moment when you came along. And it was a very serendipitous thing. It just lined up. You happened to come along right at the moment that they were looking. That's usually what hiring is. It's a numbers game. It's a matter of random chance, more so than a very crafted outcome. Okay? So just be aware of that. Rejection does not mean some kind of reflection on your qualifications or your talent or who you are. It's just that the timing was off. That's usually how these things work out. Number 5, this is an important one. Recruiters are not on your side. In my opinion, you should treat recruiters like pathways because they're not usually the decision maker. they do have limited decision-making capability to screen you out, to do like an initial screening. But that's usually based on like very mechanical things like salary expectations, stuff like that, based on, years of experience and things like this, very mechanical things. When it comes down to like a judgment call, that's usually not in the hands of a recruiter. That's usually more the hiring manager. And the hiring manager is the boss, the person who manages a team of some kind. And that hiring manager is looking to fill a position because they have decided they need another employee on their team to do the work that they're told they need to do. They're going to need another person at least, so they've decided that, and their interest is that whoever gets hired is going to report to them, right? So they're the ones that really kind of know what's going on. They're the ones that usually want control over the final decision, right? So recruiters are just sort of their assistants. They're kind of grunts. They collect resumes, they coordinate job interviews, they schedule meetings, they post the job in various places, they gather the resumes, stuff like that. And then they may do an initial screening based on mechanical, simple things, right? So the recruiters, they don't work for you. Their interest is not to help you outside of simply filling the job. So for example, they don't care about giving you feedback on why you might not have passed an interview or something. That's not what they do. They don't care about that. They're working for the company, not for you. It actually works against them if they give you full and complete information of what the thought processes were when they're judging candidates, because then, to a degree, the cat can be out of the bag. It's also it can be a legal liability if you say like, oh, I rejected you because of this, right? And, companies in the United States have been sued over stuff like that. So, things like this. So it actually works against them. Number 6, culture fit is code for do we trust you? Just so everybody knows. Fit, it can mean an entire kaleidoscope of different things depending on who's saying it. It can mean anything they want it to mean. But a very common thing it might mean is we don't trust you. Not yet, put it that way. So that can be an interpretation of that. And finally, very quickly, before we get to the first questions here, is the fastest way to get hired is to stop acting like an applicant. This might be kind of surprising to some people. Instead of saying, please consider me, okay, think, here's how I can help you. Okay, that can often make you much more desirable when you present yourself like that, okay? So just some stuff I'm throwing out there. Okay, let's get to your questions. So the award for the first person in the chat goes to Dino Peters, if I'm saying that right. Says, hey, I took a look at your channel and I find it valuable and interesting. I do analytics and I've seen yours kind of struggling in views. Oh, good God. Okay, so it's advertising. Great, wonderful. Anyway, get in the chat. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Beyond what I've said, I do these live streams to answer people's questions. What I did today is kind of the exception. I usually don't have any planned agenda. I'm just here to answer your questions. I often don't respond to comments and things because it's just too time consuming to type out long answers and stuff, in comments. It just doesn't work. So I do live streams as a way of responding and answering questions. So get in the chat and let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, I'm sure Dino Peters is a bot. It could be. I really don't know. McLovin77 is here. I recognize the name. While we're waiting for the questions to roll on in, always remember to check out this course. It's all my advice in one place: how to get hired on the posted job market, and also how to get hired in the hidden job market. So, this can really open doors for you. I've had something like 800 people take that course. So check it out. And there's a link in the description box to the course and also to a video I made a long time ago that describes how the course works, what you get, answering frequently asked questions, stuff like that, in the interest of being as transparent as possible. So check that out if you're kind of struggling with the whole hiring process. You don't really know what to do, especially with the hidden job market stuff. And this course is geared towards introverts, technical people and introverts. So if that's you, then you should be able to get a lot out of this. So check that out. Link in the description box below. Let's see. Cool. Let me know what your questions are, and I will do my best to answer. I think this year I'm going to get an upgraded computer. I've been using the same computer for like literally 14 years, something like that. So I'm going to upgrade it. Also, I can't run Windows 11, so that's the deal. So I need to change that. And once I do, I might go to a different streaming platform, because the software I'm using right now, which is Streamlabs, it's less than stellar, put it that way. I don't like the company. I don't like the software. It's just very hokey. And like right now, I'm adjusting my camera brightness manually, if you can believe that. There's no way of doing it actively inside the streaming software. So get in the chat. Let me know if you guys have any questions or comments. We got 18 people here. Ballistic is here. Welcome to Ballistic. Says, hi, so I have 2 interviews coming up. One of the jobs is something I probably won't accept anyway, because smart start is 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pain to get there and don't want to wake up at 3 a.m. I just want to go to it for practice. Do you think I should just cancel the interview? No, I don't. I mean, listen, it's like, first of all, that's kind of a personal question. I don't know what's right for you. I don't know what makes sense for you. But in general, I would say no. You never know what's going to work out and what's not. You're guessing at this point. And it's not a stupid guess, but you never really know. Now, for people who have had a lot of experiences in life, I mean, I'm sure you guys know where I'm coming from here. There's stuff that you think is like a surefire thing that goes totally off the rails and ends up being horrible. Other things you think are just like, this is a long shot, this is not going to work. And then next thing you know, you pursue it and it's like, wow, this actually turned out to be a lot better than I thought it was. That stuff does happen. So I would say in my life, that's happened a lot. You got things wildly varying from expectations. So based on that, I would pursue any lead, right, that you have. So if someone's willing to give you an interview, I'd go down just with suitably low expectations, go down, do your best, see if you can get it. And then once they offer it to you, then you can make a more informed decision. You have the opportunity to ask for more money. You have the opportunity to ask all kinds of questions, see if there's some flexibility there. And the other thing is that, like, a lot of stuff in companies, like I did this as a CEO, I was a big fan of this, where, you hire people temporarily or on like for specific terms, And that's just really a form of probation, right? If it's not really working with them, it's not really a stellar experience, there's an obvious out, right? Because you were never a permanent employee. It was just sort of for a short term. But for the people that they start and they work out really well, and it's quite impressive what they can do, then you transition that into a permanent employee kind of arrangement, or you change their role and responsibilities. So, you never know where stuff could go. So I would say just do it, Does volunteer work count to employers as experience? Well, yes and no. It depends. I mean, it's like saying, do people care about this? Well, some do and some don't. And it also depends on what level. More so for the junior level, right? They care about volunteering. But what volunteering does is it signals what you care about. Because the idea is that, in general, the idea is that you're not being paid to do that work. So if you do it anyway, that signals that you obviously care about it intrinsically and not just you're doing it for the money, right? A big problem that employers have when they evaluate candidates is you don't really know if this person wants to do this type of work and has genuine passion for it, or they're purely in it for the cash. You have no idea, right? Oh, sure, they can maybe talk a good game, but you have no idea if that's true or not. The thing about volunteering is that kind of, it puts your money, figuratively, puts the money where your mouth is, where, you're obviously not doing it for the money. You're doing it to get something out of it. You're being rewarded in other ways, right? You enjoy the work, or you're giving back, or whatever, right? So that's what it signals. That's what the good thing about volunteering is. So yes, it can certainly count to show you what type of work you've done, what you enjoy. So if you go to a job interview and you say like, oh yeah, I'm a people person. I love working with people. I love meeting new people and, this kind of thing. And then on your resume to back that up, you got all kinds of volunteering experience, all different groups. You're not paid for it, or you're not paid substantially for it. So that kind of suggests that what you're saying is true, right? About the people person thing, right? Because here's some direct evidence. You're obviously not in it for the money. So, you know what I mean? That's the purpose it can serve. And I'm nervous in interviews, so just exposure psychologically. Yeah, you know what? Practice makes perfect, ballistic. The way we get good at things is we practice them. There's no magic to doing job interviews. If you do, like the thing I always recommend, if you've maybe heard me say this before, I'm not sure, but what I recommend is working with either a career coach, or like just the poor man's version of that is like, working with a friend or family member in preparation for job interviews. Do mock interviews, so practice interviews. The other person pretends to be the interviewer, and they're going to interview you, and you're going to act like this is real, right? And they're going to ask you questions, and you're going to answer them the way you would in a job interview, and you're going to care about this, and it's like rehearsal, right? Now, if you do 3 or 4 of those a day, right, for 10 days, that's like 30 to 40 pretend interviews, right? And if it feels a little awkward, doing this with another person, that's good, because that's simulating what it's probably going to feel like when you do an actual job interview. You're sitting down with some stranger, and even like the virtual interviews, like on a Zoom call or something, it's it feels nerve-wracking, because you're talking to some stranger you don't know, right? So you do 30 to 40 interviews, and you're going to improve. Like, you will know the common job interview questions backwards and forwards. Like, you will know the answers for them. You'll have drilled them into your mind. And then just the general experience of like entering a room, sitting down, shaking somebody's hand, like responding to the first question, and all this kind of stuff. You'll generally feel more comfortable with it because you've rehearsed it so many times, right? So that's how we conquer our nerves. That's how we get good at things like interviews. Also applies the same way to things like public speaking or conversational skills, that kind of stuff. So there's no big magic. This is the work you do. Now, if you're between jobs right now, this is a great opportunity to do this. You should be doing this at some point anyway. If you have a friend or family member that you trust enough to do this with, you can do it. The added bonus is that if you trust them, you can ask them and say, like, look, how am I doing? Is there something I'm doing that you think I should do differently? And they can say, well, now that you mention it, you're doing this a lot, and that's kind of a little bit off-putting. I would recommend you maybe do this, right? So you're getting that feedback, right, from somebody. Now, I'm not a career coach. I don't do this. So I'm not there's no conflict of interest for me to recommend this. I'm not recommending myself. But, if you have the opportunity and you have the means to be able to do this, hire a career coach, even if it's just to do one session, like one hour call with them, and they'll do a mock interview with you, and they can give you, they'll say, as a recruiter, here's my professional opinion of how you're doing. This is what you're doing well. This is what you're not doing well. And then here's my recommendation, right? So not only is it practice, it's a way to get that feedback, and you're getting it from someone that works for you. You know what I mean? They're on your side. They're not like a recruiter that you apply to for a job where they're representing the employer's interest. This recruiter is in your camp. They got your back. You pay them. They help you. That's the idea. So you can get more objective feedback that way. Anyway, I could go on forever, but check that out if that's kind of something that, that appeals to you. There's certainly enough career coaches and things online. I work with one of them every 2 weeks. I do a joint live stream. Her name is Abby from the YouTube channel Life Work Balance. Check out her stuff if you're wanting to do that kind of thing. Ballistic says, remember the career coach thing. We'll look for someone. Yeah, if you don't know where to start, you could start with the one that I do a live stream with every couple weeks. Abby, I'm not sure if, I don't think her channel is in the description box, but if you go to my YouTube channel page, like you click on the picture of the company's expert, way down at the bottom, it links these two channels, the company's expert 2 and the company's expert 3, and also Life Work Balance. So there's a link right there. AutoCAD Designing 6308 says, Bill, I got a job doing exactly what you said, doing the hinge on my... Congratulations, AutoCAD Designing 6308. That's great to hear. I'm glad that it's working out for you. Congratulations. And thank you for coming back and telling me. It's hearing that kind of feedback that makes my day. So way to go. Ballistic says, my second question is, the other job I do want, they are going to do an in-person interview. Okay. I applied for manager, didn't get it, but store assistant is available. They have 2 full-time positions and 1 part-time. How would I say that I don't want to work part-time? Well, here's how I would do it. First of all, I would not say that, right? Apply for the full-time positions. Don't apply for the part-time. That would be kind of what I would consider an obvious thing to do. Now, if they try and push you towards a part-time thing, until you get an offer in your hand, nothing matters, right? So you don't want to say negative things. You don't want to say, I don't want this and I don't like that and I won't accept this. You want to avoid that in general. If they try and push you towards it, I would say, well, I would prefer a full-time position. That's really kind of what I was envisioning, something like that. Now, if they do offer you a part-time one, and that's the best you can get, if you get the offer in hand, I would at that point, when you negotiate, you have to accept it. I would say, everything looks great. I'm really excited to work with you guys. The pay is fine. The conditions are fine. Everything here is fine. If you make it a full-time position, I can accept immediately, and do it that way. And just, say like, absolutely, like you're being as agreeable as possible. And you're just saying, if you change this one little thing, then we're good to go, And I would phrase it like that, and only at that point. I wouldn't close doors ahead of time. Does that make sense? That's how I would personally handle it. I mean, either way, you're not accepting a part-time position, but you're just handling it in this way. Okay, also, what does a second round interview mean, job application wise? Well, for a lot of positions, especially more higher paying stuff, what they do is they don't just talk to you once, they have multiple interviews, right? So what they're doing is, they start with like this many applications, right? Maybe a few hundred, right? And then they do a screening round where they like eliminate people based on salary expectations and basic stuff like that. If they were fired from previous job, things like that. And then they do a first round of interviews. So they might be talking to 10 people, let's say, right? They interview 10 candidates, right? And then what they do then is they eliminate roughly half of them, or a certain amount. And then if they do a second round, they go from 10 candidates down to about 3. And then for those 3 candidates still in the running, they do another interview. And then the result of that interview is they select between the 3. They select the one person that they're going to pick, right? So you do 2 interviews with them, right? Now, there's multiple ways this can work. A common way it works is that you go back and you're talking to the same people that you talked to in the first interview. If that's the case, then you're probably going to go deeper. They're going to ask you more detailed questions, right? Another way it works is that you do a first round interview and you interview with some people, but then when you come back to do a second interview, you're actually interviewing with different people. That's another scenario, right? In which case, it really kind of is a replay of the first interview, just with different people, right? Maybe the first time you talked to the recruiter, that was like a screening interview where you did a 45-minute job interview and you just talked to the recruiter. They call you back to do another interview. This time, it's with the recruiter, the hiring manager, and maybe the owner of the company or something, right? So it's going to be largely a replay of the first round of interviews, only that the questions are going to come from different people. So there's multiple ways it can work. There's a few general rules, like if you tell a story, make sure you keep your story straight, don't contradict what you said at the first interview. If you're being reasonably truthful about things, then, you shouldn't have that issue. If you're dealing with higher people in the company, they usually care more about attitude. They care more about ambition. They care more about how passionate you are to work in this organization and doing this kind of work. Things like that, and less about the technical details. Other than that, there's not really a lot of difference between the 2 rounds of interview. AutoCAD Design says, excuse me, could be nothing or could be that they want you or looking for more ways to discontinue your application. Okay. Juliet says, hello, boss. Thank you for the support you provide. You're welcome. I got my first job within 1 year of relocating to the US. I confess one of your videos helped me a lot. I will purchase the Get Hired course this February. Well, great. It sounds like you're doing okay. You got your first job. Is that now over? Like, are you now looking for another job? I presume, since you're here. Is that what's going on there? Yeah, and usually it's good to, I know not everyone has this luxury, but usually it's good to look for another job while you have an existing job, right? That gives you a bit of an advantage in a couple of different areas. So if you can, that's usually a good way of doing it. it's easier said than done. Probably the furthest thing from people's minds when you're gainfully employed is to then go and look for another job. You know what I'm saying? And also that takes time. That also takes availability. So it's harder to look for a job while you're currently employed. But if you can do it, that's the way to do it. Yeah, we've got to the end of the questions. So just as a reminder to everybody, while we're waiting for the questions to roll on in, check out this course, my Get Hired course. Link in the description box below. All my advice in one place. Also, I have another one here. This one is probably pertinent to people here too. This another course is called Write Like a Professional, and its goal is to teach you advanced communication skills. So everything I learned from being a supervisor when I started to being a CEO when I sort of retired, I ended my corporate career. Everything I learned about communication skills along the way, I put them into this course. So if you have any interest in learning that stuff, check out this course. I'm trying to figure out why I look so bald in the picture. I mean, my hair is not doing that bad. I think it's just all swept back or something. And the light behind me is probably not helping. Anyway, but yeah, check out this course. Write Like a Professional. This will teach you how to write and also teach you how to communicate, what to say, what to indicate in different situations. So if you're interested in that, check it out. There's a link in the description box. And also there's a link to a video I did describing this course. So it tells you what you get and how it works, and answers to frequently asked questions, in the interest of being as transparent as possible. So check that out if you have any interest in that kind of thing. Basically what I'm saying is that if this is the kind of course you like, then this is the course for you. Words to live by. T19 says, what's your advice/tips on moving internationally for a job? I don't know if I have any. That's a very general topic. I mean, moving from where to where is kind of important, and what industry you're in is kind of important, and why you're moving is kind of important, and some kind of detail about who you are and what you have is also very important. It's different if you're a truck driver versus, a professor of economics. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really have any tips for something that general. Just the only tip I would have is be fully informed as to what you're doing and look for specific concrete examples of people who have done it before. You can do people searches on LinkedIn. And if you have the premium version of LinkedIn, the search is unrestricted. So if you search for someone that's in a similar position than you, they're coming from here, they're going to there, they're in the same industry at the same level, you can not only see what they did by looking at their profile, but you then have the option of reaching out to them and having a phone call or something with them and asking them specific questions about how they found the experience. And that can be very, very helpful, right, to being fully informed as to what you're doing. That's what I'd say. Ballistic says, it seems that looking for another job while having a job is attractive to HR people the same way women find you more attractive when you have a girlfriend. Well, I wouldn't know much about that anymore. It's been several decades since I had to worry about that kind of thing, so I'll take your word for it. Ballistic, shave, grow a beard. Now this is in regards to what? The woman thing? The woman thing? Are we talking about the woman thing? Is that how I can refer to it? Yeah, if your problem is that, you're a dude and women find you just way too attractive, and this is a problem, okay? I suppose a full beard might help. It depends what you do with your full beard, of course. Now, one option is to grow it out and grow your sideburns out and then do a sideways mohawk so you look like a flower, That might be the solution to your problem. I don't think women will be tripping over you after that. Another option is to just shave your entire face. You see, You see, I'm like a business guy. The reason why traditionally guys would be clean shaven in business is because generally speaking, men look more approachable and friendly, when they're clean shaven. If you have like the full beard, you almost look like a Viking warrior sometimes, So anyway, that's the theory. So what you've got to do is distinguish yourself by shaving your face clean, but then growing a big puff of hair on your neck, and then you don't have to worry about this problem, just disappears, Ballistic says, I wish I could grow a beard, but I have Asian genes. Oh, okay, I see. Well, this sounds self-evident, but I've seen a lot of Asian people with beards. It's okay. I don't think it's necessarily Asian means that you can't grow a beard. I don't think that's a thing. McLevin says, you are far more handsome than the guy on the cover. Me? Oh, I'm known internationally for being handsome. Oh, you mean, are you talking about that guy? This? You can't mean that guy. I don't think I'm more handsome than that guy. I mean, congratulations. You've discovered what I was going for, by the way. So good catch. Question. How to quell a question at a job interview about moving between jobs often? Quell concerns of jumping ship too often. Like man overboard kind of thing, or walking the plank. Listen, that stuff is kind of in the eye of the beholder. Everybody's got a different perspective on it. COVID came along and messed up everybody's norms on how they regard that question. Because before COVID, if you were staying in jobs for less than a year and then jumping, and you did that a couple of times, that can send up a red flag that you're some kind of job hopper who takes a job but then doesn't stay. They don't stay to the point where they're over the learning curve and they start to become more productive, right? Someone that's restless, that's always switching jobs, they never stick around. That is a red flag to recruiters. It's a red flag to hiring managers. The problem is where you draw that line varies, right? COVID came and it changed, everybody's attitude to this, because a lot of people were moving around in the wake of COVID because, opportunities shifted very suddenly. So I honestly don't know the consensus of opinion now on exactly how many months, where it starts to become a concern. If you've had 2 jobs in a row where you're there for like 9 months, 6 months. Obviously, if you have 3 jobs in a row where you're there for 3 months, that can be a red flag, right? And that's on your resume. So that's what I'd say. There's no kind of consensus of opinion on that. If you feel that there's a chance they could see you that way, then I would consider leaving 1 or more jobs off your resume if it's gonna be more trouble than it's worth. You know what I'm saying? So, Ballistic says, no, you talked about being bald. Yes, I did. Because everybody knows that once you go bald, your career is over. I mean, it's just self-evident. So it's naturally, I need to get a wig. Maybe I should do a live stream in a wig. I have worn a wig. I did a video on like how to dress for a job interview. So I had to wear like a big 80s hair metal blonde wig. So that was fun. I haven't worn a rainbow clown wig. I want to show up and be interviewed for something very serious in like a proper suit. And I used to like the 3-piece suits, with the vest, but with a rainbow clown wig. I want to see people's reaction. See if they'll listen to my answers as intensely. Like a flower. Yes, exactly. There's some interesting stuff you can do with your hair. Guys have a bit of an advantage here because they got the hair on the bottom side of the head too. So you could really harness that and sculpt it into a theme. You know what I mean? Very good for some kind of business statement, or like someone was talking about with your attractiveness to the opposite sex. It makes a statement there too. We all know it's good to stand out. So there are some distinct possibilities. Marcel says, if a candidate has already a job and is looking for another, is that really a good thing? I've seen many people saying that that's not a bad thing, but really good indeed. But, and then it just ends. It varies, but yes, it's generally a good thing to always be looking. Even if you're just casually looking, you always keep an eye on what's going on if there's any opportunities that could apply to you. That's usually a good thing. I don't think a lot of people would give you an argument on that, right? But I take your point if you're suggesting that, like, you get a job and then your primary focus after you've gotten the job is to see if you can find another one. You know what I mean? That would signal some bad things, like you don't give a crap about the job you just got, and you're restless and you're never satisfied, and you're always feeling like this is not good enough, like you're a glass half empty type person. I suppose, but it's always good to be thinking of where things could go. I think that certainly some people will agree that that's how they should operate. And the other thing is that you just never know. Like, this is an age where, you have corporate layoffs that come right out of the blue. Things change very quickly, and there are no guarantees. There never were any guarantees, but that's become abundantly clear recently. And, you need to do what's right for you. So if you have other options and you have other irons in the fire, you're casually looking, that can be a good thing. It's not necessarily something to shy away from. Okay, Ballistic says, how would I say I plan to stay long-term and learn? Well, you could just say it just like that. It's saying I'm looking for a role that is tailored or is set up to for me to be a good fit, so that my skills and abilities and experience can be brought to bear to do a really good job in that role and have the role fit me. That's what I'm looking for. And by all indications, this looks like it could be a role like that. And if that's the case, my intention would be to stay long term. I'm looking for, some stability. I'm looking for a place that I can invest in and capitalize on being familiar with the organization and being familiar with the culture. Something like that, would go over well, I imagine, generally speaking. Mank says, thank you for all of your help, Bill. You're welcome, Mank, and thank you for being here. I hope you're having a great Friday. And if you do have any thing you're wondering about, fire away. Marcel says, when the candidate is looking for some new sector, would that not be seen as someone not that fix? Let me reread that. When the candidate is looking for some new sector, would that not be seen as someone not that fix? Besides a candidate that works a full-time, he is not all day available. How would you evaluate that? I think you're asking about, if you're currently employed full-time, how would you look for another job while you're working full-time? Wouldn't that mean that you're unavailable to go to interviews and do all this kind of work and stuff? Well, it's a challenge. If you do work like a day job, like where you work during the day, like in banker's hours or whatever, you would do a lot of your applications and stuff and research and that kind of thing in the evenings, right? Maybe half an hour a day, 1 hour a day, whatever. Now, if you are getting interviews and you have to go talk to somebody, there's multiple options. You could take a vacation day or a sick day if you have those options, or a personal day. That may be possible. Maybe, if you have a part-time job, then you don't have to worry about that stuff. But those are some clear things. You could also try and do interviews, try and schedule them for after hours, like maybe 6 p.m. or maybe on a Saturday. Sometimes you can do that kind of thing. So, you have all these kind of options, right? It really depends on what your situation is. Mank 55. In a hypothetical scenario, if I received a job offer from one employer, but I'm still waiting to hear back from another job I really like, should I wait? What would you do? Here's what you do. You take what's in your hand. Okay? You accept it, or like you negotiate with it. You don't just refuse it or say, I need more time to think. Okay? If there's something that's offered to you and it's something you want, take it. First come, first serve. If you're, let's say you're being interviewed separately for two jobs, job A and job B. Okay? Now, job B is the one you're really excited about. Okay? But you're interviewing for both. Now, let's pretend that job A comes back to you first with an offer. And they're saying, like, great, we think you're awesome. We want to hire you. Here's the employment contract. Sign it, and let's get started. Right? You're thinking, well, this is good, but I was really hoping that company B would make me the offer because that's where I really want to work. What I'd say is take the job for company A. Okay? Keep going down the process with them. Don't stop or delay the process because you're waiting to hear from somebody. Now, maybe it turns out that if you take the job with company A, it was good because company B never made you an offer. They just never got back to you. So you didn't get it. But let's pretend that you start working at company A and you're there 2 weeks and you get this offer from company B, right? You could still entertain it. Let's say company A is paying you, I don't know, $10,000, right? Company B makes you an offer for $8,000. Now you have the option of saying to company B, well, listen, I'm making $10,000 right now, so I would need like $12,000, or I would at least need $11,000 or $10,000 or something like whatever, and see if they'll match it, see if they'll give you what you want. If they don't give you what you want, then it's kind of good that you've got your job from company A because it turns out that you would rather take $10,000 than take the job for company B, right? If they do pay you $15,000, then, obviously you can just terminate your job with company A and move over to company B, You say to company A, look, I'm terribly sorry. I've had another job offer. It's for this amount. Now, can you match it? Give them the opportunity. They say no. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I need to move on and take that job. I'm sure you understand. And then you just leave and take the job for company B. So that's how I would recommend you operate. Take the job. Don't turn down an offer because something may or may not happen. You know what I mean? You need to react in the moment to what options are before you. How do you say this? Arshdeep. Hi, international student, mostly of the companies and rejecting based on that, even though I have experience and qualifications. How to address that? Well, I'm having problems understanding. International student, most of the companies and rejecting based on that. So what are you saying, that you're applying to a lot of jobs and they're rejecting you based on the fact that you're an international student, but yet you have experience and qualifications? Okay, here's what I'd say. International students face some unique challenges. Anybody who's moving internationally, traditionally you'd have like a major hurdle, and that is people need experience in the host country. Okay? Not your home country, your host country. So let's say hypothetically you came from, say, India and you moved to the United States for school and you're trying to get a job in the United States. Okay, let's say that. Okay? American employers will not just want you to have experience. They will want you to have experience in their country, right? That's a big hurdle. Now, I'm not an expert on this stuff, okay? But I know that one thing that people do is when they arrive in the home country, they, a standard thing is to take whatever job you can get, just so that you have home country experience. So for example, you arrive in the US and then you do some menial minimum wage job, not because that's what you want to do, but because this gets you a couple of things. First of all, it gets you home country experience. You have now worked in the US, okay? You now have a boss that's in the US that you can use as a reference, that any prospective employer can call up and say, you're American, you supervise this employee, what did you think? What's your opinion of them? Things like that, right? That's very important. So it can be an extra little hurdle to get that, but it's a stepping stone. It's not something you do permanently. It's something that you just do to serve a purpose, maybe 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And it serves that specific purpose. And then hopefully you can use it to then get more industry pertinent experience in the home country. Okay, so that's usually how it's done. But like I said, I'm not an expert in that. I've never had to do that myself. What I'd recommend is for you to find and contact people who have done the exact move that you're wanting to do. So they've come from the same country you've come from. They've then moved to the country that you're now in, and they're working in the industry that you want to work in, okay? And you can find them on LinkedIn by doing searches, people searches for these terms. And like I said earlier, then you can also reach out to these people. You can see their profile, so you can see their resume, right? So you can see how they did it and what led to what, right? But you have the option of also contacting them, calling them on the phone or something and saying, or saying to them, could I have a quick phone call with you? I'd very much like to ask you some questions about, your journey in doing this and, and your opinion about how it should be done or it could be done. And some people will say, sure, yeah, you could call me. Here's my number. And then you can get really good insights straight from the source, from people who have done the exact thing that you're wanting to do. Okay, so that's what I'd look into if I were you. Marcel says, sorry for my English, I'm French. Pardon mon anglais, je suis français. Je suis désolé. Ara says, thanks very much, Mr. Bill. You're absolutely welcome, Ara. I try to do my best. I don't always succeed, but hopefully you're getting something out of it. If you have any other questions or any questions, let me know. Mank, thank you for answering my question. You're absolutely welcome. And, these are intelligent questions that I'm getting, so good. Arshdeep says, yes, I have a master's degree in the US and I have internship in my field. We need visa sponsorship in future to work long-term because our work visa is 3 years only. Okay. Yeah, and I'm not in the US, so I don't understand the intricacies of US immigration. I don't know if anyone really does right now, but yeah, obviously you'd want to talk to people that know all the specifics of what your situation is. So there you go. Awesome. Well, we're at the end of the questions, so while we're waiting for more stuff to roll in. Arshdeep says, I'm in the USA. I'm actively contacting, but they said company stopped sponsoring visa of now due to political reason. Yeah, there's some interesting things going on in the US right now. It's always good to mix things up, keep people guessing, and they're doing a great job of that. Marcel says, from personal experience, contacting people from the sector you're interested in is one of the best advices a young person can get. Absolutely, yeah. Hopefully everybody knows what an informational interview is. If you've never heard of this, my God, do some research. Go to ChatGPT, as a very basic thing. Let's do this live because I know everybody finds this stuff fun. What is an informational interview, and why should I possibly learn how to get one and do one in the context of perhaps finding a job? right? This is the kind of thing that I'd recommend you do. If you don't know what this is, okay, learn all you can about this and then practice doing these. Go out and do these. Okay, so what is informational interview? An informational interview is a conversation, not a job interview, right? Not a job interview. Very important. Nothing to do with a job. It's to do with information, okay? Different thing. You're meeting or Zoom calling someone who already works in a company you're curious about, a role you might want, an industry you're trying to break into. The goal is information, not employment. Now, important note, you're probably looking for a job. If not actively, then, in the background, this will help you get a job. The thing is, you don't say outright that, I'm here for a job. I'm here investigating whether I can get hired here. You know what I mean? It's a little subtle. So it requires people to think in these terms. It's a higher level of thinking. Okay? Not everybody's capable of doing it, but that's what's going on. Okay? The goal is information. You're not asking, do you have a job for me? You're asking, can you help me understand how this actually works? Right? Now think. So far in this chat session, we've been discussing a lot of questions from a lot of different people. And people are wondering things. How does this work? How do I do that? Now, I'm sure you all have even more questions about stuff in your industry. How does one get these jobs? How does one do this job? How does this work? Why is this done this way? I've seen it done that way, but I don't understand why. Help me to understand why it's done that way. I'm sure you could think of many, many questions, okay, like this. And the idea is that you do these with people that are above your level, right? There's no point in talking to people at your level. They can't help you. There's no point in talking to people that are below your level. They can't help you. The people that can help you are like above your level, right? So they're at least one level above you, the level of your boss, right? Or your boss's boss, or your boss's boss's boss. These are the people that can actually help you. They could hire you on the spot if they wanted to. They could give you all kinds of advice that, if you followed it, it would really help you, right? And they can explain a lot of things to you. Okay? So that's the idea. So this is the type of people that you might want to do an informational interview with. Okay? Right. So you're asking, can you help me understand how this actually works? Think of it as curiosity-driven, low pressure, two humans talking, not a gatekeeper evaluate you. Yeah, this isn't a job interview. This is two people saying listen, I'd love to get your expert opinion on this. Would you be open to speaking with me for about half an hour? Would that be okay? And some people will say no or they won't respond. Other people will say yes. They'll say, sure, yeah, come on down. Let's, I got half an hour, right? If you present yourself in a professional way, you don't give off any weird red flags. You know what I mean? Then a lot of people don't mind. What it is not, this part matters. An informational interview is not a job interview. It's not a pitch, a resume dump, or a request for favors. It's none of these things. Okay? I agree. Why should you care, especially if you want a job? Most hiring decisions happen before a job is posted or without a posting at all. Absolutely. Hopefully everybody knows this. The way people usually hire is not by posting a job. It's by going through okay, who do we know who is capable of doing this job, who might be available now? Let's start by looking at those people first. If one of them is free, and they're okay with doing this, we know that they're capable of doing it. Let's get them, Now you could be that person. How do you end up knowing people? Well, it's by doing things like this. It's by doing things like this, like an informational interview, especially if you make a good impression on people, right? They're impressed by wow, you're actually interested in what I think about this. Very flattering. Okay. Informational interviews plug you into that pre-posting reality. They help you understand how hiring actually happens. Stop guessing what employers want. Okay, become a known quantity before there's a job, right? So they know of you. Now, if a job comes along and, it's kind of right up your alley or it's kind of in your area, they'll consider you for it. Lower the emotional stakes. What was this again? This is why should you care? Because it lowers the stakes. You're going to someone who already knows you, right? Why people say yes to these. Here's another counterintuitive thing. People like talking about themselves. They like talking about their careers. They like talking about how they got to where they are, especially when there's no pressure. They're not being sold to, and they feel helpful instead of defensive. In short, respectful, like a short, respectful ask, like, I'm trying to understand this field better, and would really value 10 to 15 to 20 minutes of your perspective, is surprisingly effective, right? Like if somebody came to you, someone you didn't know, maybe they contacted you on LinkedIn and they said, listen, I don't know you, but you work in this industry and I am a student or something. I'm wanting to work in that industry. I'd be very interested in hearing what you could tell me about, your experiences in this industry and how it works and, like sort of how your the basics of the role that you're in and stuff like this. I'm just trying to learn. I'm just trying to get some idea of like what's happening out there, and that I can understand maybe more of what I want to do with my life in this industry, how I want to approach it. If somebody said that to you, and they said like, do you have maybe like 30 minutes and you could spare me, and I could ask you some questions? You'd probably say, that sounds fine. I got 30 minutes if you want to. You know what I mean? Now, if they approach you in a really suspect way, there's all kinds of red flags, then you'll probably say no. But if it's professional, it's polite, it seems reasonable, a lot of people will do it because it's very flattering. So anyway, this is what an informational interview is. Now, if you've never done one, don't freak out about this. Learn all you can about it, because if you start doing these are like so much more effective than applying for jobs. That's how it turns out. Okay? You jump to the front of the line if there is a job at one of these places with anything connected to this individual. Okay? So anyway, I could go on at length, but hopefully that makes sense. Check out this if this is a new idea. Okay, so this was in response to Marcel's comment there. Yes, I agree with that. Arshdeep says, thanks for sharing. What's the best way to ask for an informational interview? Well, all the details are what I have in that course right there. Okay, so I go through everything. And I've done this. I've built a consulting business up. That's what I do now as my day job. I'm a business consultant, a management consultant. So I did this at a very high level, where I was only doing informational interviews with CEOs. And I interviewed like tons of CEOs. This was about 5 years ago. And a lot of those people ended up being my consulting clients. So, but that's how it started. So the bottom line is that you can use a combination of Google Maps and LinkedIn. Google Maps helps find the employers or the targets around you. And then LinkedIn helps you see inside those organizations to the individuals. It's also the way you can reach out to them then once you've found them. Okay, so that's the general idea. That's how I did. Now, there's many other ways to do this. Networking is like a huge topic, and there's many things inside that topic. If you're an extrovert, you probably wouldn't do it this way. You would do more like in-person stuff. You'd go to events and things like that, and do it that way. But I'm an introvert. A lot of introverts are having a hard time with job search. So I went about this the way an introvert does it. I did as much as I possibly could on social media. It's much more efficient. And then did in-person interviews when they invited me in. They said, absolutely, I would love to talk to you. Here's some time right here. If you can make it, great. Let's do this. And only then I would go down. And it doesn't feel like a job interview. it feels like two people just having a conversation, you know? And it's very simple to do. You ask them questions. Very simple. So anyway, learn all you can about this. I'm not here to sort of give a crash course in it, but do your own research. You can start with things like ChatGPT. I have my course, of course, that goes into all that stuff. This I keep pointing to the wrong one. This one, Get Hired. This course that talks about that. So if you want to go that route, that's certainly a thing you can do. But either way, learn all you can about it. It's to your advantage. It will open up so many doors for you, and it's just a good thing all around. Incidentally, it also helps you with your confidence and your communication skills. And after you do a few of these, you won't have any real deep concerns about like meeting anybody. You know what I mean? So anyway, it's a good thing. Love77 says, are freelancer websites like Fiverr or Upwork just scams? I don't know. I don't really have a lot of experience with those websites. I would imagine the answer is yes and no. I mean, I'm sure there are people on there that might be less than forthright, but I would be surprised if like the entire thing was a scam. You know, I have heard of people actually having real positive experiences on some of those sites. I don't know the details. I'm not representing anything. I'm just saying I've heard that. But it's like a race to the bottom. It's like, rock bottom stuff as I understand it. So you would want to set your sights a little bit higher than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hate these stupid cliched expressions, but there is an expression that is true. Fish where the fish are. If you're going for a good job, find the places where there are good jobs and then look there. Don't find a place where there aren't really any good jobs and that's where you're focusing all your efforts, That's why I say focus on the hidden job market rather than the posted job market. The hidden job market is where like 80 to 85% of the jobs are. It makes the most sense to look there. Things like what we just talked about, informational interviews. You start talking to people higher up in these organizations that can hire you, those are the people that have the power to give you a job. They have jobs, they have power to give you a job. You know what I mean? So like, it's usually far more productive to do this kind of stuff than to be posting, like applying to hundreds of job postings. You know what I mean? For a start, your competition is so much better. When you apply for a job these days, you're going in with like hundreds of applicants. When you do an informational interview and you're kind of probing for a job that way, because that's what it is. Like, you're putting yourself forward as, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. And indirectly, you can see that I know my stuff, right? So that's really kind of what's going on in the background, right? So it's so much more productive, right? Because you're going to the source, the guardians of where the good jobs are, rather than messing around with things like Fiverr. I don't know much about Fiverr, but I don't think there's many like 6-figure jobs that you can get the equivalent to going through Fiverr. I'm not sure of that. Marcel says introverts are too underestimate for networking and jobs interview. Also an introvert line, Bill. Yeah, I'm. The language is still a bit of an issue, but I agree. Introverts do underestimate the stuff, and that's where they fail. Think of it this way. In the private sector, which is like most employers, where does the money come from? Like that employers would have to hire you. They have money. They're looking for people, right? Where does the money come from? Well, at the end of the day, long term, it comes from making sales to customers, right? In one way, shape, or form. Now, yes, there are minor exceptions like government, but I mean, I'm talking about the private sector, right? At the end of the day, you've got to make sales in some way, shape, or form. Now, how does one make sales? Well, you're connected, right? You're connected to people who would want your stuff and have the ability to pay for it. They're connections, right? And this is where extroverts, unfortunately for introverts, this is where extroverts have an advantage because they recognize that connecting people is how you make things happen. And if you're in business, you're an employer, at the very least, you need to be connected to customers. The more customers, the better, right? You're also connected to many other people. You're connected to suppliers and partners and regulators and, all kinds of other things, right? But if you're the type of person that understands the value of connections and you're good at making connections and you can make more of them, you've got it figured out. And this scales all the way down to a personal level. You don't necessarily have to know everything to be very capable, right? The cliche is you have that Rolodex, that contact list. And like I learned this earlier in my career being a project manager, where, like any question I get about insurance, like I'm not an insurance person. That's not my background. But I regularly deal with a contact at an insurance company, and I have her on speed dial. So any insurance question I get, I just forward it to her. She gives me all the technical answer that I need, and then that means that anyone can ask me an insurance question and I can answer it, right? Any type of construction question, industrial construction, like how does this work? What's the code for this or that? I don't know, but I'm connected to several people that are either the builders or the inspectors or code experts or master craftsmen or whatever. I can pick up a phone and in 5 minutes I can get you the answer to whatever construction question you might have, no matter how complicated, simply because I'm connected to those people, right? So connections are extremely important. And introverts, what I've noticed, I mean, I'm an introvert, but other introverts, they underestimate the value of social interaction and connections. And so they don't respect it. And therefore they don't focus on it. And that's what hurts them. That's what makes it hard for them to find jobs. The jobs go to the extroverts because everybody knows them. They're the obvious person that you would consider when you have a job because you know them. Are they the most qualified? Maybe not. There might be other people that are more qualified, but the problem is you don't know them. So that's the problem. So if you're an introvert, you got some really amazing technical chops, try tacking some of this stuff on. It's really not rocket science. It starts with just having a respect for it, realizing how important it is, right? You've got two products. One is a piece of crap created by an extrovert. It's not very good. Another is like an amazing technical solution created by an introvert that kicks ass because it's done right. Now, which one sells more? This one by the extroverts because it's the only one that everybody's heard of. So they buy that, right? If nobody knows about this, nobody buys it, right? So you win on a technical level, but you fail on a practical level because in order for people to buy that, they would have had to know about it. And you're not very good at evangelizing it and telling the world, right? Anyway, you get the idea. I'm not going to preach about this too much, but this is the thing. I wish more introverts were tuned into the stuff. It would be so much better for them if they were. So that was in response, kind of, to Marcel. McLovin says, I want the experience, but I refuse to do a skilled job for $5. Okay. Well, if that's the only way to get the experience, then I guess you're just shit out of luck, because if that's what you have to do. Other people are saying, I am willing to do that, right? Now, what I suspect is the case is that there are better ways to get the experience, right? And I think that's what you're getting at. So investigate that, you start with ChatGPT. Start by saying, I'm in this position, I'm in this location, I want this. Does it exist? Where does it exist? How can I get it? Ask those kinds of questions and see where it leads you. Or if you give me the specifics, we'll do that together live, because I want to demonstrate that to people so you can do this yourself. Like, give me the name of your city or your location, like your region, if you're not in a city, what industry you're in, what type of role you're after. You know what I mean? And we can do it live if you want to do that. We got 22 or 24 people here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. Check out my courses. As always, I got 2 courses that I think people here would be interested in. First is this one, how to get a job. Second is this one, how to communicate professionally, like at a high level. Okay. This can get you far in multiple ways. Number one is if you want to get promoted at work, you want to be seen as a contender to move upwards. Tacking on communication skills is a really good thing to do. So check that out. If you're looking to get hired, that course teaches you how to get hired in the posted job market, where you apply for jobs, and also in the hidden job market, where most jobs are, where they're not posted publicly, but instead you're doing things like networking and stuff like that. And it's geared towards introverts. So if you are an introvert, you don't know how this stuff works, but you do want to learn, check out that course. There's links in the description box to both these courses, and also I've done videos that explain the courses. They're also linked in the description box underneath this live stream, or underneath this video, I should say. Check that out. And what everybody loves is seeing these handy dandy little ads that I did. So this is Write Like a Professional. And this is Get Hired. So send in your questions. This is primarily a Q&A, so I'm here to answer your questions. Gary Hughes says he's an introvert, promotes his tip-top course, and talks confidently to people living around the world. Yeah, absolutely. Because it's true. The only difference between an introvert and an extrovert is that extroverts enjoy social communication, right? The social interaction. Introverts generally don't enjoy it. They don't do it for fun. When they come home, they do something solo. They read a book. They play video games. They watch a movie, whatever. You know what I mean? That's what they do to recharge the battery. Doesn't mean that they can't be good at speaking. I mean, a lot of introverts are pretty competent, actually. Every time you've seen a scientist or an engineer or an accountant, you're probably seeing an introvert. And, some of them can talk very well. Some of them, like me, give keynotes and things like this. I mean, I have a YouTube channel. Many YouTube channels are done by introverts, and I get a lot of people on this channel that are introverts also, But the advantage I have over a lot of you guys is that I'm old. Like, I've had several decades to learn this stuff and to practice it. I've had a successful corporate career, so I've had a lot of practice. I've done a lot of public speaking, and I've been an instructor in university, like a teacher. So, that's how you develop some of this. And even with all that, I'm not exactly perfect. I tend to ramble. I tend to speak in a monotone, and I tend to use a lot of crutch words like ums and ahs and things like this. So, I'll always do that. But you just don't let it hold you back. And all I'm trying to do is explain to people that might be suffering from a similar situation that you can overcome this stuff. It might not be easy and it might not be immediate, but you can do it. Certainly you can overcome it to get a job. You know what I'm saying? Which is what we're ultimately here to talk about. Marcel says, my Get Hired course is gonna me soon my next evening routine. B, I guess B, soon my next evening routine. Okay, good. Hopefully that works for you. And it answers, the things you're wondering about. Yeah. So we got 24 people here. Get in the chat. Let me know if you have any questions. If we don't get many more questions, I'm probably going to ramp this down. But if you do have anything that you're wondering about or struggling with that I haven't covered, get in the chat. Let me know, and I'll be happy to help you out if I can. Let's do this just for a moment here. Okay, so what is an introvert and what is an extrovert? I know there's probably been many definitions of this, but at least I've always been taught the Myers-Briggs version of it, which is, introverts and extroverts can both be good at social interaction, but introverts don't enjoy it, whereas extroverts do. That's my understanding. What would you say? Let's see what this thing says. Yeah, your Myers-Briggs is mostly right, but here we go. They got to correct me. Incomplete. The cleanest, most useful introversion versus extroversion is about where you get your energy, not how socially. Well, that is what I said. That's the core idea. Everything else is downstream. An introvert tends to recharge alone in low stimulation environments. Yeah. Lose energy from extended social interaction. Why did that jump? Prefer depth over breadth, fewer, deeper conversations. Think before speaking. Not like extroverts who think during speaking or don't think at all. Feel drained after a lot of people, noise, or interaction. So crucially, introverts can be excellent at social interaction, right? They just pay an energy cost for it. And that's true. I mean, I do live streaming several times a week, and I spend a few hours solo to balance it, After a party, meeting, or networking event, an introvert often thinks, I need to go and be by myself for a while. Yes. I need to spend some high-quality time with myself, that kind of thing. That's what introverts say to themselves, and they mean it, too. Extrovert tends to recharge through interaction. So their idea of unwinding at the end of the day is they invite 50 people that they don't know over to their place and all have like a big get together, right? Where they just babble like turkeys to each other. It's interesting. An extrovert tends to gain energy from people, conversation, and activity. Think by speaking. Enjoy stimulation, movement, and engagement. Feel flat or restless when alone too long. Yeah, then they go insane when they're by themselves. So they can't be technical people, or they have problems. If they have to work solo in a room by themselves, then they go a little nuts, After the same event, an extrovert often thinks, that was great, what's next? And when can we eat? That's the other thing that they think. Anyway, so it goes... I don't know why it's wrong, where it goes wrong, because what I said is exactly what I think this thing said, but yet it told me I was wrong, so you gotta love that. Myers-Briggs framing you describe usually says they do and they don't. Okay, yeah. Well, whether they enjoy it or it costs them energy, it's similar definition. Anyway, you guys get the point. That's what the distinction is. I suspect a lot of you guys might be introverts. I get a lot of introverts on here. I'd like to think I understand introverts because I've been a lifelong introvert. And there we go. No new questions. Okay, so check out my course. My courses, I've technically got 3. The other one is the $100 MBA, but that's to learn business. That's like the scientific study of how to make money. That's what business is. So you could check that out, but I think people here would care mainly about this, where you develop advanced communication skills. This can help get over what we've been talking about, some of that social anxiety and stuff. Practice makes perfect. And this, how to get hired. So check those out. Hopefully everybody has a good weekend. I will be back on Monday doing a couple of live streams. And I wish you guys all the best. Take care.